Wow. Wow. I'm so wowed. I forgot to wave. Hi, guys. I'm blown away. Producer Stanton cut together that entrance, that video you just saw, which to me that's like Avatar meets Harry Potter meets Charlie Chaplin, the greatest speech ever given, with the dash of the best church you ever went to. That's like epic in the truest sense of the word. What a pleasure to watch. I'm looking forward to next Saturday just to see that again. So here we are, number 19, Talk of Our Times. This is the third one I've done from my mother's home, and I like sitting here. I was with her when she got the chair I'm sitting on. It's embroidered. It's old timey. It's a needlepoint, excuse me, not embroidered. And this is my old promo picture and my montage of family photos and my niece's graduation cap sitting on a plate holder, which I've shared with you before, that she put together herself and decoupaged the top of her graduation cap. So it's nice to have sort of these totems of family and love around me while I'm doing this. Family is extremely important, but what's important to me is, the family, I call family Vatican roulette. I mean, there's people you kind of ended up with for whatever reasons. And then there's the people that you have that you decide like, oh, these are the really extra special good ones. And outside of my immediate family, I have a lot of regular parts of the 330 gang. My Aunt Linda, who's not even my blood aunt, but I have an aunt in Texas that I call Aunt Linda. She's a Marian of an in-law, and I still consider her very close. My cousin Kimberly, Kim Dixon Richards, if you guys see her, that's my first cousin. My cousin Myra, who I'm very close with. So I have family that's my extended family that I'm close to and love. And then I have my immediate family, which is my mother, my two brothers. My father's no longer with me, but as you guys know from last Saturday's show, he's still very much with me. And one of my brothers has blessed me with three nieces who are the light of my eyes. And I got to spend extended periods of time with two out of the three, and the third one's coming tomorrow. So those of you who saw my truncated 330 today, in fact, it was funny when you were saying, one of you guys said, you look cold. And I said, yes, I was, because it was 59 degrees, overcast and very windy in the park. We were in Stern Grove, and it was beautiful. And the day was beautiful in a way that's the opposite of Southern California. I like coming up here because it's been quite toasty in my neighborhood. Hello, Jose Ortiz. I don't usually say hello to everybody like I do. Of course, I know Hector's with me. I don't say hello to everybody like I do on 330, but I know the usual suspects are lined up because I can see you, and it's so wonderful to see all of you. You're just, like family to me, which is what I was getting to, which is we have formed sort of a relationship and a commitment. This is my 19th live show, and I've only missed 3 shows. So we're talking about 22 weeks of us being together every Saturday night. And 1 was for surgery, and 2 were for shows that I just couldn't get around. So there you have it. And, it's been, and actually I did a short one from Colorado Springs when I was actually performing, but I did it in between performances. So we've made a commitment and we've kept it. And that means a lot to me because I understand that time is so important. And even in the time of COVID, where, as I've said over and over, we're trying to create a rhythm from no rhythm. The fact that we meet up at 3:30, 7 days a week, and that we meet up one night for a little bit of a, date night means a lot. It's given me a focus, and it's repurposed a lot of material. I write in my journal, every single day I write. And then, I don't have a place to put it. I'm not writing a lot of new jokes. I mean, I'm using them for Zoom shows, but I'm much more introspective these days for a multitude of reasons. I always say that, and I'll give you some of the reasons. But I have to tell you, and I say it over and over, and I said this at the very beginning of COVID, that sometimes hard times make the best memories. I look back at my parents being divorced and being shuttled between not just 2 houses, but for a period of time, 2 states. Well, there was something exciting, being a kid in the 70s and flying by myself on Continental Airlines. And there was something about having a destination and not just sitting in the house like a lot of kids do when their parents are together. My father always had something planned when we were with him. And, when we got home, there was something very nice about being home and being with our cousins. And there was a texture to our life that created a grit in us. And I look back, and interestingly enough, as I look back over my life, I want to talk a little bit about, a lot of you are pretty groovy people, and I think probably 85% of you have seen The Matrix at least once. And I think some of you, I'm going to suspect Hector and Jose, have seen The Matrix probably many, many times. I own it. It's on my phone. I reference it. I jokingly say it was a documentary. Because in life, you're either a person who knows who you are and knows what you want. My name is Neo. Or you're that mundane agent, energy sucking, the soul vampire that's just kind of going from place to place in a state of neediness and gloom. And the contrasts to me have never been more visible than during this time. The people that are obsessed with the numbers and obsessed with politics and obsessed with the economy, etc., etc., etc. And I asked them, because when I was on the radio, people would call me and they would say to me, are you a Christian? And I would say, and this is interesting because I have a lot of conversations with a lot of people on a daily basis about beliefs, just beliefs, because your beliefs are your guidance system. So people would call me and say, are you a Christian? And I would say, who wants to know? And then they would say, I do. And I would say, why? And they would say, I'm curious. And I would say, are you going to like me more or like me less? What's the right answer? And they would say, well, why won't you answer? And I'd say, because I'm not entirely sure what you're going to do with the information. And this would just aggravate them no end. And then my final answer would always be, there's no doubt that, that no different than Gandhi, that a person named Jesus lived and evidently said some important and good things. And you can never go wrong living a Christ-like life. And then they would say, well, what does that mean? And I would say, I just spoke in the plainest English you've ever heard in your life. You can never go wrong living a Christ-like life. So, what does that mean? To be of service, to live by the golden rule, to lead with love, to serve as a good example, to not judge or indict other people. These are pretty easy things to grasp. And then the person would say, well, why can't you just say yes or no? And, and this was a pretty regular conversation. It wasn't like one phone call, 5 phone calls, 10 phone calls, because people are interested in pinning you down, because when they can pin you down, then they can, just like in the Matrix, they can use you as a battery. They can suck the energy out of you. They can impose their agenda or their will or their mindset. And the interesting thing is that, I have lived a peculiar life. To me, peculiar is neither negative nor positive. It's a life that is not easy to codify or quantify, put up against the life of other people, whatever that means, the masses, whatever. I'm not married. I do not have children. I have never owned a home. And to be perfectly candid, pre-COVID, it was a little bit of a head scratcher to me, not in a negative or a positive, but like, wow, this did not go the way I planned. And now I'm thinking, what if, because of some inculcation, I had decided to stay married to somebody that I couldn't stand or didn't like or was unhappy or even mildly uncomfortable with for some reason that I thought at some point something would play out and become easier, which it doesn't, by the way. Then what would I do now? Well, it would be difficult. It would be challenging. What if I had small children and I was a single parent? Because that would have been the other option. Marriage didn't work, but I had the kids that I actually wanted to have. Well, then I would have children that I would have to homeschool and take great pains to keep them safe and get the correct food and care for them in a very specific manner, which is what you have to do now if you want to be a good parent. And that would prove a challenge for someone who is a creative, who spends a great deal of time in isolation and writing. Obviously, I would do what I had to do. I like to say that I won't know any different. It's no different than when people ask, it must be hard being, a female stand-up. Well, I have no frame of reference. I've never been anything but. So I say these things because this is a peculiar time. And I remember there was a movie called Serial in the 70s, late 70s, with Martin Mull and Bill Macy from Maude. And it was, I don't remember, I'm going to paraphrase the quote, but this little boy is at a psychotherapist, and it's filmed in Marin County, and it makes fun and pokes fun of every kind of hippy dippy, like, the movie was ahead of its time. It was pre-internet, pre-Cupertino, pre-Jamba Juice, pre-skinny jeans, but it was right on the money. I mean, I think one of the couples gets married, and they're like wealthy San Franciscans that end up hiring like a Native American to do a shaman dance. It's actually a very funny movie, and their wedding vows are just like you-ness, me-ness, us-ness, we-ness. Like, it's just a very ahead of its time, hilarious movie, and a lot about people being self-absorbed, which is always in style, but now more so than ever. So I look at that time, and I think of the first time I came to California, and in particular Northern California, which was the summer of 1981. I was a teenager the first time I saw San Francisco. I can remember because I know exactly when it was. It was July of 1981, and I actually had Sergio Valenti jeans that my stepmother had bought me in one of the few moments she was trying to be in my good graces. And so we came to California. We flew to San Francisco. We met my father and my stepmother in San Francisco, and we rented, wait for it, a K car. Now, if you know what a K car is, you're over 40. And it was a bunch of, they were basically American Yugos with like hamster wheels in the engine. They were extremely inexpensive, and they were made by Chrysler. I believe it was Chrysler. And Lee Iacocca was the president. And maybe it wasn't, whatever it was, but I'm pretty sure it's Chrysler K cars. And they were, like trying to save the company by making these cars that were basically a motorcycle with a cover. And we rented one. The last thing you ever want to be in your life is on Highway 1 in the Big Sur driving south in a K car on a family vacation. It was worse than Chevy Chase. But I was thinking about all of that because that was a challenging summer. My stepmother, hated us. In short, she had no desire to be part of my dad's plan of being a dad until we were grown-ups and out of high school. I was in high school, and my brothers were, young teens. Maybe my youngest brother, Will, was 6 years younger, so he was 12. He wasn't even a teen yet. And it was interesting. We stayed, we found a hotel on Lombard Street, near Lombard Street. I want to say it was a Best Western because my father's travel agent put us in an airport hotel. Like, nobody stays by the airport in San Francisco unless you're a businessman or a hooker, and or both. And so we moved to a hotel. I think it was a Best Western on Lombard. I have a very good memory, so I'm pretty sure I'm accurate on most of these things. And we saw the world's curviest street, and our first night we ate at Aliotto's. I remember it like it was yesterday. We ate at Sabella and La Torre, which is still there, because we just kept going back to the pier. We just decided we liked the pier the best. And we ate at Sabella and La Torre, and the pier was brand new. The shopping mall on the pier was brand new. Diane Feinstein was young. She had posed in a bikini. She said she would take a picture in a bikini when the shopping mall was finished, and evidently she did. That was a very long time ago, like almost 40 years. And I remember the songs on the radio that summer. I remember Pina Colada song and a few other things that were big then. And I remember hearing the Ventura Highway while we were on the Ventura Highway and just being in love with California. I just loved it. I knew I wanted to live here. We went to Marin County. We saw the big giant redwood tree. We saw a building designed by Frank Lloyd Wright. I believe it's like a civic center. My dad's always big on showing us buildings and museums, was big on showing us buildings and museums. And we coined the phrase zip dang that summer. And zip dang meant, something that was fun, like going to the mall or going to an amusement park, Universal, Knott's Berry. And, we were playing whack-a-mole. I remember playing whack-a-mole. And I was never particularly good at whack-a-mole. Not that I don't have good reflexes, it just seems silly to me. But my stepmother, who was just a vicious individual, she really enjoyed whack-a-mole and was quite good at it. I think she just liked hitting things with a hammer. And I remember us being there, and we invented this fake character named Martini Sunlight. My brother invented him, my brother JC, who's extremely funny. At moments, he's probably funnier than me. I just don't know that he'd be willing to stand up for an hour. But he invented Martini Sunlight, his alter ego, whenever he was getting annoyed that there just wasn't enough zip dang in our day, that we were seeing just too many museums or buildings. And I remember that summer, at the time, I can intellectually remember that we were faced with some challenges. But oddly enough, when I look back at it, it was a brilliant summer. We had a wonderful time, broad strokes, wonderful time. And it reminds me that I believe that I will look back on this summer and think, remember the COVID summer? Remember when I started the live stream, and then I took that intensive and I started working on the book, and then that happened and that happened and that happened, and the HBO special aired, and that happened and that happened and that happened. And usually I dress up for you guys, but I'm in my workout top and jacket because my mother's furnace is out, and it's like, we learned this in the summer of '81. The coldest winter I ever spent was the summer in San Francisco, the W.C. Fields quote, because we got here in July and everything was pretty good during the day, and then the temperature dropped, and the cheapest things we could find were these sweatshirts that said property of Alcatraz. So all of us had t-shirts, sweatshirts. My father, my stepmother, my two brothers, and myself had sweatshirts that said property of Alcatraz because it was the cheapest, warmest thing we could buy. And we didn't understand the desert climate because it was, even in Southern California, San Diego, in the evening when the sun goes down, it can get pretty chilly. And that was my first exposure to California, to San Francisco, to driving down the coast in the K car. We spent time in LA, continued to drive down the coast, San Francisco. Then we crossed, down to San Diego. And then that was when the 15 ended in downtown San Diego in front of the Holiday Inn, because we were lost. And my dad kept circling around saying, now you've seen the end of an interstate. And he said that about 4 times because we couldn't figure out where to turn when we got to the end of the 15 ramp in downtown San Diego. At that point, you were on surface streets and etc. And then we drove to Vegas, and it was before it was the smooth ride that it is now, where you just basically take the 10 to the 15. That was back when there was the Tonopah. It was called the Tonopah Highway. So again, this summer is a little bit like other summers I've had that were challenging, but amazing things were birthed out of that challenge. I think a lot of the closeness that I feel with my brothers and the whole California experience, and the fact that we're all bonded here and we all live here, those seeds were planted then. So while, this is happening, what I call the pause for the cause, I was thinking, well, I have time. What have I not done? Shrug your shoulders and used not having the time as an excuse. Number one answer on the board, Richard Dawson, take it away. My book. If you watch the Showtime special, Not Skinny, Not Blonde, which was filmed in 2011, it says from her memoir, Not Skinny, Not Blonde. And I cannot tell you how many emails I've received from people saying, where can I find your book? And then I have to embarrassingly say, in a cabinet in my living room, because it's not done. Well, you know, call it what you want. If you're not comfortable with prayer, and I tell people, if you're not comfortable with prayer, then SOAR. SOAR stands for send out a request, to the universe, to the air, to the ether, to whatever you're comfortable sending it out to. So, interestingly enough, I always tell people that when I show up with a clear I am, the universe says you are, it is. So I decided and declared that I was going to finish the book. Well, within hours, a writing intensive showed up on my inbox saying, if you've always wanted to write your manuscript, if you've always wanted to finish that script, one of those, like sign up for a 21-day. And I knew that it had nothing to do with whatever the curriculum was going to be. It was making that commitment to show up. It was taking my credit card out and paying for something. So I knew if I paid, I would use it. So as of Monday, and I'll share little snippets on the 3:30, you guys will get the first of it. But Monday the 31st is the prep day. It's the writing eve. And then Tuesday the 1st, from September 1st to September 20th, it's 21 days, wrap up on the 21st, and then my birthday's Wednesday the 23rd. And when I signed up for it, it felt absolutely right. Now, I have some friends, and I mentioned this last week and it bears repeating, that basically call what's going on now the election infection. And the election is in 66 days, 9 weeks and 3 days. And I say that because, to be perfectly candid, I think that it's going to come right down to, at the very end, in the last few weeks, the only thing that will be discussed is how to open the country. And it's going to be your opinion, and I mean you in the rhetorical, the opinion of what's the safest, best way to move forward in these times. And obviously, I don't think that we're going to have a vaccine by then or herd immunity. But whatever people believe is the best course of action will be how they cast their votes. And I also know that a lot of people on both sides of the aisle that I respect and like very much are saying, well, you do realize that effectively we're voting for the vice presidents because we have two older men who have worked hard, who are, challenged. Now, I'm not a political person. I don't follow these things closely. I haven't watched any debates. I don't know who is robust and who isn't robust. I can only tell you that I know what I know from, transcripts, the news. I don't get my information off places that are totally unvetted. I don't, look at videos that are cut and paste on YouTube. I'm talking about, and I'm not a CNN or Fox person. Actually, I look at stuff on the BBC, but and other entities. But the point I'm making is it's impossible at this time to not see some things, even if they're not in your wheelhouse, just because of the nature of owning a phone and having news or prompts or Twitter. I get alerts from Apple News and a few other outlets because I have friends that are producers on television news shows. One of my dear friends is Lisa Guerrero from Inside Edition. We had a beautiful lunch that led into dinner. Actually, it was probably more of an early dinner than a late lunch. But anyway, I'm blessed that after this many years, media adjacent, being a stand-up and on TV and writing, that I have friends in news departments, and having done talk radio at KFI, I have a lot of friends that are people who actually vet the news, who have to look up details, who have to know the facts, and who have to go up against news legalese. I mean, I don't know if you know this, but when I was on KFI, if you report, if you say something that doesn't come from a legitimate news source, like whenever the producers pull for the shows, whether it's Michelle Cube pulling for Bill Handel, I pulled for myself, or a couple of my producers pulled news stories for me. You can't just get news off of Twitter, or you can't just take a story that a listener sends you. And I know this because when I was on KFI, I had a very ardent listener slash fan, very engaged in the show, who, as soon as the Cosby situation started to be unearthed, I mean, as soon as Burrell, I forget the name of the black comic right now, but as soon as he started talking about Bill Cosby, this young man, a young man of color, attractive, who had been a child star, started sending me these long, detailed descriptions of abuses in Hollywood, and named in deep detail people who were, had committed crimes according to him, and gave me, chapter and verse. These things were long, detailed, single space, you know, parties, details of events, very famous people. And he said, you can talk about these things. They happened, blah, blah, And obviously I didn't. And I talked to my boss, Robin Bertolucci, just about even saying, I received this email. And she's like, can't do it. Can't do it. Can't read the email. Can't, can't. And I'm here to tell you that 2 years before we found out about Kevin Spacey, I had an email detailing that whole situation in exactly the way it occurred. But I couldn't say or do anything about it because responsible news outlets have a team, people like Clear Channel, NBC Evening News, etc., etc. They have a battalion of lawyers to make sure that they don't get sued. It's not worth it to them. They'd rather not have the story, except when you have a guy who, I don't believe this has happened anymore, but some of you probably remember, and I'm digressing, I'll get back on course, the phone hacking scandal that almost cost Rupert Murdoch a big chunk of his empire, when it turned out that that little girl that had been kidnapped in England, that he had found a way to hack into her phone before the police were even able to track the phone itself and the kidnappers. It was a very big scandal, and it was bad. Like, it went before Parliament. So there you have it. I digressed. But my point is that I have friends in the business, credible news sources, things that are vetted, and within the scope of what is and what is being said. I do believe that come November 4th or 5th, who knows when we'll know. It could be one of those, my niece is so cute, she's rattling around out there, that it could very well be that it takes a minute to find out because of the mail-in. But again, this is one of those cases where the Electoral College, now, but remember, going back to 2000, even the Electoral College didn't save us. It took us a long time with the dangling chads to figure out who the president was. So all I'm saying is that right now we have 66 days until whatever happens, and then we'll get the results. And I say that because for me, I'm using those 66 days to challenge myself to get a head start on whatever the new normal will be after those 66 days and after those results. That's what I'm doing. I see that no matter what happens, we've been in our homes for almost 6 months. Almost 6 months. End of February to end of August. We're almost at September 1st. That blows my mind. to be perfectly candid. You know, I remember coming home. I remember flying out March 6th. I flew out for Australia. And even then it was getting weird. Like LAX on Friday, March 6th was weird. I remember it like it was a second ago. Very few people were traveling. Everyone was wearing masks. I got my own whole row. Even then, I got an entire row on Virgin Australia to sleep all the way to Australia because the flight was not full, not even close to full. So I'm talking about these things because I'm asking you, what has this 6 months done for you? What have you, and I'm not just saying this in the rhetorical, you know, at some point I'll be able to, producer Stanton will, you know, be able to help me see these things in real time. But I do check the messages. As you guys know, I check every comment and I try to respond. And I'm, you know, when we debut new comedy, I try to be in the live chat at that time. And I'm asking my friends, my close friends, which now many of you have become, you know, what has this done for you, as opposed to, you know, the friends that I've used this time to move away from. Like I say, the ones that are obsessed on the negativity, the ones that just can't help themselves from talking about, you know, what I call information, why I should vote for their candidate, because if I don't, the whole world's going to go to hell in a handbasket even faster. And here's every indication in the present that it's already headed there. So, you know, blah, 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 blah. And I don't live that way. And in a weird way, it's like having a black light at a peep show. You know, very difficult times are revealing. And they have revealed, which one of my friends are stuck to the wall, has revealed, you know, the people that when push comes to shove, they tend to be panicky or negative or be in scarcity or have other things that only set the tone for them to suck in. You know, I like that, producer Stanton, information. I love that word. I coined it and I use it, and people know exactly what I mean as soon as I say it. And those people, you know, I don't want to be put in a position to be somebody's de facto battery to cheer them up. Or, you know, right after the election, I coined the term TAD, which is Trump anxiety disorder, because I had a lot of friends that were just out of their noodle. They were just out of their noodle. And I spent a great deal of time saying, okay, I've been alive a long time. When was the last time a president went to your house or shook your hand or sent you an autographed picture, whatever? You know, at the end of the day, there's a lot of checks and balances. It's probably, you know, not that much more proactive than being the Queen of England. And here's the thing, if you really get down to it, even if there's policy you disagree with, you know, sometimes their team, like football, wins, sometimes your team wins. But worst case scenario, you know, at some point the pendulum swings, and, you know, whatever side of the aisle you're on. So what's the worst case? You're embarrassed. The person doesn't represent your values. Maybe I remember it used to drive me crazy when George Bush said nuclear. It's like, it's nuclear. You are the leader of the free world and you can't pronounce nuclear. Nuclear. It's like, but even still, you know, do you hate on someone because they can't pronounce a word? No. I mean, it's like, I've been watching The Sopranos again because it holds up and it's perfect and it's amazing. And the amount of malapropisms in that show, he says instead of he has an albatross around his neck, he said he has an albacore around his neck. I mean, there's so many hilarious moments based on the misuse of words. So, like, I'm sure I've done it. There's no reason to get yourself wrapped around the axle about that. I think we have bigger fish to fry. So in the 66 days leading up to whatever happens next, because there will be a shift, one way or the other, there will be a shift. What what have you done, or what are you doing to make your life better? You know, behind the curtain, as Sarah McLaughlin, you know, building a mystery. I'm going to build a book. I've built a YouTube channel with Stanton's help. I've built a 330 gang. I've gotten good on Zoom. There's a lot of things I've done in the last 6 months that I may not have ever have done had this peculiar set of circumstances, which brings me back to the movie Serial, because the whole reason that I talked about it was that this little boy is sent to a child psychologist in this bizarro movie, and he says to the psychologist, in an insane world, the sane man appears insane. And the doctor's so impressed with him, and it's just a quote from Mr. Spock on Star Trek, which is a very funny part of the movie because Mr. Spock made a lot of sense. He's an important part. You know, if you want to get into the psychology of Star Trek, you know, Captain Kirk was pretty much all ego and id, you know, and obviously, you know, Dr. Spock, Mr. Spock, Dr. Spock was a baby doctor. Mr. Spock was all superego. He was all, let's think this through and let's be rational and logical. So from the movie Serial, after all these years, almost 40 years, I remember that scene with that little boy. In an insane world, the sane man appears insane. And, you know, in a peculiar world, the peculiar person seems exactly right. And I'm a peculiar person. And during this time, I am counted the blessings that I've stayed the course of my peculiar life, because I've, number one, what if, you know, I don't know if you guys know this, but I have all kinds of weird trivia in my head, which is probably why I can't learn more things about my computer, because my RAM is full. I know enough to know that. And on Jim Carrey's Walk of Fame in Hollywood, and whether you like him or not, there's no doubting that he's an incredible talent. He wrote on his, you know, his signature where his handprint is in front of Grauman, says, "Merrily, merrily, merrily, life is but a dream." I mean, think about, you know, row, row, row your boat, and the bigger picture, just like a lot of people don't realize that Ring Around the Rosie is about the bubonic plague. Ashes, ashes, we all fall down. Pocket full of posies. People held flowers to their nose because, you know, the plague was evidently stinky. But merrily, 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 life is but a dream. So getting back to the Matrix analogy, if you're a brain in a black universe, if you're plugged in, if you're I know Kung Fu, then why is this in your movie? Why is COVID in your movie? What can you benefit? What can you learn? Why is it here? And if everything is a dream, if everything is part of a construct of, you know, you took the blue pill or the red pill. I've been thinking a lot. I've been driving, and driving is when I think. So I was very happy when I took my car to BMW Encinitas, and they said it's going to take a few days to figure out exactly what the problem is, but we'll give you this nice loaner car. And I'm like, well, I'm going to San Francisco then. I'm going to put the miles on their car instead of mine. What a wonderful opportunity. So you know, I've been driving. I wanted to do it anyway. I would have done it in my car, which is why I took it to get service to begin with, because I wanted to come up here, well, before my nieces get firmly entrenched in school life. And, you know, my mother's going to go to Florida for an extended period of time. And the baby grows so fast that it's very much, you know, it's sad. Every time I see her, I like, wow, blown away by how much she changes within a few weeks. So I fully intended to come up here. But as I was driving, I started thinking about my life leading up to the moment I got off the plane and COVID was occurring. And, you know, what I refer to as the pause for the cause. And I thought about, you know, what world I have created around me, what was wrapped around me before I started creating, and then what I manifested. And I thought about how when I was a little girl, I went to Catholic school in Miami for 1 year. I don't, we moved to a neighborhood after that to North Miami, and there, I don't know if it was because of the expense or there wasn't one close by, but I didn't go to Catholic school. I went to public school for the remainder of my elementary school, and I was delighted because I really didn't enjoy Catholic school. I didn't like the nuns. I didn't like the way they looked at me. It just seemed an incredibly harsh environment. I didn't like it. But that being said, I went to St. Teresa, and it's a beautiful campus, and it's still there in Coral Gables, Florida. And because it was a private school in a good neighborhood, I mixed with very nice children, and I can remember them. I remember them well. And in fact, I'm going to tell you a stupid story. There was this one little boy who always sat next to me on the bus, and I can picture him. He had very long eyelashes and kind of biggish ears, and he looked like a cute mouse boy. There was something mousy about him and sweet. And I always saved a seat for him on the school bus. And he had the habit, as little boys do, of evidently, and I'm not a little boy, but evidently there's a phase you guys go to where you hang on to your package for dear life. And it's usually like kindergarten, first grade, I guess, because my brother JC did it too. And my dad would always say, "Are you a pot?" And my brother would say, "No." And then he'd say, "Then let go of your handle." That was his thing, to remind him, like, let go of your biz. And so the kids in the school gave him a nickname. But since I was in first grade and I didn't know the difference, and I was very formal, my dad never spoke to me like a child. I was always, like a little adult. So we were at the dining room table. I'll never forget it. I was in first grade. And I'm talking to my dad, and I say, "Well, it's like my friend Pud says." And my dad said, "Excuse me?" Because I was, quoting my friend that we'd had a conversation on the bus. And my dad said, "Excuse me? What did you say?" I said, "It's like my friend Pud says." And my dad says, "Pud?" I go, "Yeah, Pud Scruncher." And that's what the older kids named him. That wasn't his name, but I didn't know. I thought that was his first and last name, Pud Scruncher. So my dad figured it out pretty fast and was laughing really hard. And you know how sometimes, parents can be, they can have a little fun with a kid. Why not? So my dad was like, what's his name again? I'd say Pud. And now I was getting really upset. I was like, I've said it like 5 times, Pud Scruncher. My dad's weeping. There's tears running down his face. And my mom hears from the kitchen, has a fit. She comes running out. She goes, "I promise you that is not that little boy's name. You go to school tomorrow and you ask his real name, because that's not it." My dad looked at her like, "Oh, what a killjoy. We were having so much fun with this business." But I don't remember his last name, but his name was Juan. His name was not Pud Scruncher. It was Juan. But I remember being driven to school in first grade because my mom would drop me off and then I would take the bus home. And we had a Toyota, a brand new Toyota Corolla. And the funny thing is that the first year of Toyotas, can you imagine living in America when there were no Toyotas? But that was the first year, was when I was in first grade. And my dad bought my mother, it was white. I can picture it when I close my eyes. It was just like this little tiny box car, just this little funky car. It wasn't as bad as the K car, but it was not great. And that was when you didn't pump your own gas, when you would just pull up to a gas station and say, "Fill her up, high test." And we always used to get gas in the Winn-Dixie on 67th Avenue and Red Road. And it was very inexpensive. And I can totally picture the guy that used to put the gas in, because it was the same kid that worked at the gas station and cleaned your windshield. And I can picture that the whole big thing about the Toyota was that gas was very cheap and it took very little gas and it had great gas mileage. That was when you could buy a VW Beetle for under $1,000. But my dad went Toyota versus Beetle. My Aunt Iris went Beetle. So I remember all of that so clearly, because when I look back on it, I think, What a beautiful world. What a beautiful world was wrapped around me if I'm just a brain in a black universe. If I know Kung Fu, how wonderful was it to go to school in this little Toyota with my loving young 20-something mother, listening to the grassroots singing Midnight Confession. And I remember being confused because I thought, there's no confession at midnight, not even on Christmas Eve when we have midnight mass. I knew what confession was because I was going to Catholic school, but the grassroots song confused me because I took it literal that he had some place that he could go confess at midnight that he was in love with this woman. Now, I say this because I guarantee you that every single one of you has as rich a tapestry of memories, of songs, and childhood misunderstandings. I thought that poker face was like a fireplace poker because it's a stick. So it has no expression. When people would say, oh, he has a poker face, I thought it was like, yeah, he's like a stick. You can't read him at all. I didn't realize it was the game poker till I was in my 20s because my grandparents played poker. And then I thought about record albums, and I got very sort of granular on the drive up yesterday, thinking about the book, thinking about how excited I am that I signed up for this intensive. I thought about, being in high school and waiting at the record store with my then boyfriend Garth for Bruce Springsteen's The River to come out, because I was already so enamored of his. Can you imagine a time when Bruce Springsteen only had 4 albums out? The Wild, the Innocent, and the E Street Shuffle, Greetings from Asbury Park, Born to Run, and what I still believe to be his best album of all time, Darkness on the Edge of Town, which my Aunt Linda May, who I mentioned earlier in this recording, gave me because she ordered it through, wait for it, Columbia House, when you could get 10 record albums for 10 cents and sign up. Very much that was that time's version of Apple Music. It was subscription. You joined a record club. And she joined a record club, and one of the records she got, excuse me, see, this is live because Stanton can't edit me out for sneezing, and we don't have a cough button like we do in a radio studio where we have a 7-second delay. But that is how I got my copy of Darkness on the Edge of Town in 1979. Was a gift from my Aunt Linda May, who got it through the Columbia Record House. And I started thinking about the tapestry of this last 6 months. I started thinking about the songs and the dance party, our 2 dance parties, and the disco music, and Donna Summer, and my flashing lights that I bought from my sister-in-law on Amazon that make my living room into an instant discotheque that I bothered to install because I had the time. And I started thinking about the music of now, because there are songs that are out now that I like. I like the Chainsmokers, and I like, which isn't exactly right this minute, but it's relatively new. And I've been listening to stuff on Sirius XM on the Hits channel, and I don't know who all the people are, but I know that I like the way it sounds. I'm not a fan of some of the dirtier stuff. Like, I don't like, I'm not a huge fan of Cardi B, but I like Katy Perry. I like dancing. I like anything with a good rhythm. I like DJ culture. I'm a big fan of Skrillex. In fact, Professor Stanton and I have had extended conversations on our love of Skrillex. I promise that when we look back on this, we're going to see good things in spite of the bad things, or whatever we are ascribing bad qualities to. I'm not in that space at all. The fact that I'm not on a cruise ship and that I can pick up and take a loaner car and take advantage of that and come see my family, I can't recall in the last 35 years when I had that kind of freedom. Because, you know, and a lot of people don't know, Chris Christopherson wrote the song Me and Bobby McGee. Chris Christopherson, by the way, is also a Rhodes Scholar. Don't you like how I just throw so much stuff into these? It's like kitchen sink, right? But he wrote Me and Bobby McGee. And the line, freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose. You know, at this point, people are saying, well, we're not free. We can't get a pedicure, or we can't eat inside, or, you know, we can't do this and we can't do that. Well, true that. I mean, you can have a picnic. You can stand 6 feet away. I've had some beautiful meals in the last few weeks. Just, you know, in Culver City, they blocked off the whole street, just like New York, like Times Square, and just put tables out on the street. And there was something very cool about sitting in the middle of the street. And Thursday, some of the 3:30 crew saw that I got a pedicure in a parking lot. These very industrious ladies just put AstroTurf in the parking lot in front of their nail salon, put up a tent, hung some ferns, played some music, and it was on. I got a pedicure in a parking lot. They had a mask, I had a mask. It was a good time. We have a lot more freedom than we think. We have a lot more opportunities right now to do things that we haven't done. I'm making the most use of my time that I can in the next 66 days. My first cruise, even though I know it'll never be exactly like it was, my air quotes return to normal work is November 14th. And it hasn't been canceled. And it may not be. And in fact, Royal Caribbean was asking my agent, because of COVID and because they have to test you and they don't want people flying and on and off, if I would be willing to extend my cruises to be a minimum of 2 weeks, where now they're like 5 days to a week. And I said, sure, why not? And I suspect that I'm going to work a lot. And I suspect that I'm going to buy the internet package so that I can be on with you guys, so that the 3:30 can keep going after November 14th. I think we'll all know when, where, and how to bring it down to 3 days a week, or it's never going to go away. And neither is the live stream. Now, if I'm performing Saturday night, it might be a pre-record, like I used to do on KFI. But we've established something, and that in itself is a blessing. And I started really thinking about, you know, life is but a dream. It's what we create. It's what we decide. It's what we focus on. And I know that everybody knows these things intellectually, front brain. Maybe it's like, yeah, you know, I've thought about, like, I'm not talking about woo-woo, the secret stuff. I'm talking about on a day-to-day basis, what decisions do you make to make the most of your time, to not be somebody else's, battery, to really find joy, to be of service. Now I'm going to take a couple of moments here to show incredible specific gratitude. Number one, there is a pretty good chunk of you, more than I could have imagined prior to this, that take the time to repost my stuff. Hector makes entire flyers with links. Jose Ortiz creates his own posters and photoshops, and I could not pay cash money for the amount of attention, currency, energy that you guys share with me. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again, it makes me feel rich as Rockefeller. The fact that a couple of you sent me specific congratulation gifts for my HBO airing. My friend Derek Pearson sent me 2 pounds of malted milk balls, of Whoppers. And I say this because gratitude is important. And in the world we live in, to sit down and write a thank you note, some of you I can't, because you sent me Amazon gifts. I know where you live, Hector, because you sent me actual real card with a return address. And I save all the return addresses that I get. and email addresses when people send me things that aren't just on Messenger. And I try to respond to as many messages as I can. But I think reciprocity is very important. I think that the fact that you have made yourselves available to me, to my work, and to let me know that you appreciate me has absolutely been a game changer for me. I'm excited like never before to finish a couple of things that have begun. And in fact, I'm going to put producer Stanton on the spot because he and I started this little project. We were calling it the Summer of Slam. And I think just for fun, we're going to try and wrap it up next weekend, which is officially Labor Day. And that is the end of summer. Not officially, it ends in the autumnal equinox, as I said on one of the 330s. September 23rd, my birthday, is officially the end of summer. But I'm hoping I can drag producer Stanton out next week because Memorial Day weekend, which seems a million years ago, actually before Memorial Day weekend, but the Friday before, we went and shot footage of Disneyland, of abandoned Anaheim, of the world's busiest McDonald's with yellow crime tape around it. We went to Universal. We went to the empty gates. We got shooed away by security. We drove down Santa Monica Boulevard and took pictures of, it was supposed to be the 50th anniversary of Gay Pride in Boys Town, Santa Monica. WeHo was totally decked out. Guess what? Nothing happened. It was canceled. And we have pictures of Beverly Hills. We did a couple of walk and talks in Beverly Hills and in the Valley where they were ghost towns. I mean, Beverly Hills was empty. It looked like a zombie apocalypse. So, before we move on to the next project, 6 Feet Apart, I think that producer Stanton and I should try to put together a little 3 or 4 minute something for you guys and for YouTube that'll really capture my perspective, my point of view of Summer of Slam. And then we'll move on because we certainly are enjoying our dance parties and we want to expand on that. And I'm trying to set up some outdoor performances in Southern California, one in San Diego potentially at the amphitheater, so that we have plenty of room and a couple of parking lot shows because I miss you guys. And I performed in Colorado, but my real fan base, a lot of you are in Southern California and in Florida, where I've also worked on setting up some shows in Florida because they're a little more open. That's right, Hector. Even if I don't perform in your neighborhood, I'll make it a point to meet you somewhere between Ocala and Orlando. So that being said, guys, I can't even believe how fast the time goes. I write loose notes. I'll show you the notes. That's what I write. I mean, it's just really loose notes. I wrote election infection, 66 days, 9 weeks and 3 days, 6 months on lockdown, the project, the matrix, music, the tapestry, and what feels normal now. And that's it, because you guys inspire me and I have a lot to say, because this is sort of my palate cleanse, my, as we say in Spanish, the superstitious, the curanderas, the healers, we call it a despojo, like it's like an energy, we're expunging or saging, because Monday is my pre-writing setup, and then Tuesday I go into my 21 days, and then Not Skinny Not Blonde will become a thing to be shared. But for now, we have our Saturday nights and our talk of the town, and I'm going to end this the way I've ended all of these shows and every show since early 2000. And it was actually Christmas of 2000, going into 2001, driving through an ice storm in Atlanta, that I first thought about how I wanted to close my show. And here it is. Love hard, forgive harder, and get as happy as you can, as fast as you can.